when you start something that's so disruptive, and that when anything starts, there's really not a market, and you have to create a market. And so when you're creating a market, that takes a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of energy to educate people that there is a better way.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Erik Von Horn.
Mr. Jeff, how goes it?
What's up, man? Thanksgiving is almost upon us. Pretty excited.
Yeah, it's coming up fast.
Pretty
By the time
excited.
people listen to this, Christmas will probably be coming up, and
Oh,
I'll probably be
shoot.
skiing, hopefully.
I should have said, like, hey, Christmas is coming up.
You're still a rookie.
Yeah.
I just got back from a trip to Napa, and I've never been there before.
hmm
First time. I went with Justin Donald and about a dozen of the Lifestyle Tribe of Investor Mastermind group, and I think it ruined me because I'm like, Justin, this is awesome. One, we play pickleball every morning, so anything with
Yep.
pickleball and Justin, he's a competitor like me, is always fun. And then he's like, Erik, this is not normal. Like where we're going, the access that we get, everything that you're experiencing is not normal. Like we went to this one Cath Yard, and they have this Land Rover that takes you around the vineyard, and has like a Tesla battery in it. So it's this old Land Rover, but electric. And that was
hmm
really cool to see that. And then we went to this other one where it was like the family was there, the
Awesome.
daughter and her kids, who this vineyard's been in their family for generations. And so it was cool to see that. And then we finished up in at Opus 1, had the
hmm
whole vineyard, the whole thing to ourselves, and got a really cool tour, and then finished up with a very fancy dinner. And I'm used to like steak and potatoes, and
Sure.
this was not steak and potatoes. Actually, they had venison. Venison was there, and it looked like a piece of chocolate. I took a picture of it. I'm like, sent it to a friend, and he's like, that looks like a piece of chocolate, not a hunk of deer. But
hmm
it was pretty epic to have that very nice fancy dinner, and pickleball, wine, friends. It was a good time, man.
I mean,
Do you,
that's how you weekend. That's how you weekend, EVH. I've only been once. I've only been in Napa once. My wife and I kind of went out there, and it was like kind of like it was during the COVID period, so it was kind of nice because the crowds were a lot smaller and whatnot. But we just wanted to kind of get off the grid and head out there, and it is a different world. I mean, it totally is a different world. It's even different than any part of California, but the experiences, like that's what's something that I didn't expect is when you go to the vineyards, like how they walk you through and the experience and the storytelling. Like we talk so much about like storytelling, right?
yeah,
Like the stories they can tell you about these grapes and these vineyards and what they do and their family. And I mean, it's just amazing. Totally experiential. I love it. That's good. Glad you had fun.
we should do like an experiential trip to Napa, just about to with brands, just to learn how to tell stories. Because you're absolutely right. The people that we're with,
hmm
I'm gonna, I don't know how to say this. How do you say the I can't say it. Yes,
Sommelier,
yeah, you have you got it out. I couldn't get it
sommelier.
out.
I think it's sommelier.
Mario,
I think.
yeah, you did better than I did. Mario is our guy, and I've known him for a number of years now, but we're there, and he's telling all these stories about Robert
hmm
Mondavi,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like he would do stuff with him, and like, I'm not a wine guy, so I didn't realize how important this guy was, but he's pretty important. But he told some great stories about some funny stuff with him, but it was really cool. It was really cool. All right, enough about that. What we really want to talk about is Salon Suites. I was thinking about just my journey. And one of my favorite franchises or industries that I've been involved with is the salon suite industry. I've talked about it on the podcast at different times.
Yes.
And I was thinking, you and I have both been in the salon suite industry. We came in about the same time, and we had kind
Mhm.
of two different journeys with it at that time. And then we've just both seen it evolve over the years. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about our journeys, where the
Totally.
industry's been, and go back and forth on that to kind of give perspective on an industry. And really where I came up with this idea for this topic was like, what are some of the new industries that are coming out in 2026? Not new industries, but like, where's franchising? Where's some unique things in franchising that we haven't seen before? And I don't know what they all are right now because we're not in 2026. January, we'll know all the new cool stuff. At least we think we will.
Yep.
And we'll talk about some of that stuff. But as I look back, like, what unique new thing in franchising has really done well, and it's salon suites. Back early on when we both first got into it, like, people really didn't know what it was. It was out there a little bit, but we were
Hmm.
fighting against a lot of things in the industry. So does this sound like a good topic to you?
I love it. I love it because, like, in my career in franchising, which is like 20 plus years now, like there's parts of my career that I can break down and almost like call it like an era, right? Like like there was a period of time where in my career where there was like the salon suite era because it came on like a freight train and I jumped in head first and it was I don't I'd have to go back in time. I think it was there, there was a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like there is with anything. And I think we're probably going to cover a lot of that today. So I won't like steal the thunder, but it was like a 2.5 to 3 year period of time where like I was even though we were always building multiple brands at the same time, this was this was the one that I was probably most locked in during a definitely a 2 full year stretch. So I'm excited about this topic because those were wild times, man. I
So
mean, I've never seen a category in franchising come in like a rocket, take off like a rocket. Um, and it was awesome. But yeah, let's
let's talk
dive in.
about both of our perspectives as, like, when we first heard about it, and then what we were thinking about the industry in general. And I remember being in Scottsdale, Arizona, at a franchising conference,
Yep,
and I we knew the different brands that were going to be at this conference, and there was this brand called Sola Salon Studios. Matt and Stratton were the
yep.
founders of it. They had history in other franchises and history in other investments that they did very well. And so I saw their presentation online, so I was excited to get to know them. I cornered them at the bar that first night. Like, it was the first night, not a lot of people were there yet. And I just cornered them at the bar. And I was just like asking them question after question after question because I was so intrigued by this model. And they were just like, it was just normal to them. Like, hey, here's our background. And this is what we've been doing. And this is why
Yep.
we love this industry. And a lot of their friends and family were their first franchisees, and so they really hadn't grown it very large, but they'd kind of been the first ones to really start to bring in a number of franchisees. And I also thought, wow, this is not a salon play. This is a real estate play, and I like that. And it didn't seem like it would have a lot of involvement from me as the owner because I like semi-absentee stuff. I don't like hard work having to be in the business disguised as semi-absentee, but I love true semi-absentee plays, which typically mean less employees. So I saw the model, I saw the revenue, and I saw the amount of employees that it took, and it really didn't take many employees. I think at our max, when we had 12 of them, I think we had about 7-ish employees in total. And so, I mean, 12 locations doing a ton of revenue to only have, seven employees, give or take. that kind of screams, not a lot of heavy involvement from the franchisee if you build it correctly. So I started to really enjoy all of those things. What I didn't like is you were fighting against an industry that were salon professionals were in chairs. They were behind the chair. They were in traditional salon models, but so there wasn't a lot of education for these salon professionals to move into a suite. So that was one of the uphill battles that we were facing. So what about you? First time you heard about it, I'm guessing it was the same time that I did. And
Same
then what were kind
conference.
of, yeah, what were some of your initial like things that you liked or maybe concerns that you had about the industry at that time?
So I was at the exact same conference. Very rarely, this was a broker network conference. So we obviously have talked about, franchise brokers slash consultants that we work with to find great candidates for brands. And one of the prominent broker networks that are out there has a conference twice a year. And it's a time where brands can meet brokers and network and share for several days. And there's every time that this broker network has a conference, there's anywhere from, I don't know, 3 to 6 new brands that come into their inventory and launch at a conference, right? And every once in a while, I mean, we've been going to these conferences for so long, right? Like dozens and dozens and dozens of these, probably over 100 of these. But every once in a while, a brand will come in at one of these broker networks, and it's kind of like you just hear the whispers down the hallway. Like it's kind of like the brand that everybody's talking about. And at this particular conference that we both met, Matt and Stratton and Sola, it was like the air was sucked out of the room. Every single person at this conference was, have you heard about Sola salons? Have you heard about Sola salons? Because just never a model like this had come in. And like every consultant, was just nonstop talk. And that's when that like this brand coming out of this conference is going to skyrocket. And and at every one of these conferences, like I said, maybe there's 3 to 6 new brands that come into an inventory of a broker network, and one typically kind of stands out above the rest, but nothing like this. I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, literally everybody was talking about it. So from my perspective, is at that point I had a very large franchise sales organization and full service franchise development company, and when I could see how intrigued everybody at this conference was with this particular brand, I'm like, I need to work with Sola Salons. I have to, that was my mission. I'm like, I got to spend time with these guys. I got to get out to Denver after this conference. I have to see this operation. I mean, it was just blowing my hair back. Plus, they were so cool. These guys were just so cool, and it had been very successful in another industry. And they were fun to be around. They were cool people. They were very smart business people. And I think that they kind of knew they had something special, but I don't know if they knew what they had until they actually went to this conference. And so from my perspective, I'm like, I remember saying, okay, I want to go out and see these guys. I want to like look at and I want to work with these guys. But then but then I also told myself, if for some reason I don't work with these guys, I am categorically getting into this industry. I will find a brand. If it's not going to be Sola, I'm going to find a brand. I am getting into this industry. I mean, very rarely am I like that resolved around a brand, or just a category, but I came across Sola and just the entire salon suite industry the same time that you did, and was totally intrigued and just knew that
So
the category was destined for growth.
So when we go to these conferences, when we get to see brands that there's a lot of buzz around, they don't always have the ending like Sola does, or some of the other salon suite concepts in franchising. Sometimes they sell a bunch of franchises, but it doesn't end well for the franchisor or the franchisee. Just because people are excited about it doesn't mean like the model's amazing or the founders are amazing. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And so Jeff and I have seen the things that have gone wrong. And so that's why we are, pretty cautiously optimistic when we see different things like that. And we dive into things today that have a lot of buzz and a lot of interest, but it has to have, for us, it has to have some longevity. It has to have other things besides just the buzz, just besides franchise sales. Like, we are looking at brand or industries right now that we know we could sell a bunch of franchises, but it is not a long-term play. We don't see it being successful for the franchisees long-term in some of these industries. And so we're staying out of them. And we might be wrong with that. But that's just where we are. So I wanted to kind of set the stage. Just because it's getting a lot of buzz doesn't equal success. Sola and the salon suite industry.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And these have seen a lot of success.
I think that one of the reasons, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the headwinds in that. So exciting, but there were headwinds that we faced. I started to touch on it a little bit. The whole industry had a history of being in like a retail place. Like, that's where the salons were, and that's where the salon professionals were. So they would, sit behind a chair. They were either getting commissions, or they were the owner, or there was some type of arrangement that way, but they were working for somebody else. And there was always the challenge was there was drama in there. And some of these professionals are like, I can't stand this, but I don't have anywhere else to go. They didn't want to get their own location and be on the hook for a 5-year personal guarantee, or pay a lot of money in rent, or take that big risk. So this was an easy way for these salon professionals to go and have their own business, like being their own entrepreneur. And so the industry, I don't remember if you remember this, Jeff, but like the industry was fighting against this. The publications, the big publications out there were against this. So there were headwinds that way, and there were headwinds having to educate the salon professionals of like, this is what it looks like. This is why it's an easy way for you to get in the business. And it was very difficult for them to leave their current salons. They couldn't just say, hey, salon owner, I'm getting ready to leave. We'll transition out in a month. If the salon owners got wind that their employee was getting ready to leave, or even a 1099 contract was getting ready to leave, like, they were out the door. Their shears and the anything, the capes, whatever they had was like in a box ready for them to leave. So it was very difficult that way. So and then, well, there's just a lot of different headwinds. Any headwinds that you saw? So there was kind of the good stuff, but there are also the headwinds. Anything else that you kind of noticed in general in the industry? Maybe it could be around anything in the industry that you saw as challenges.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, what when I was just talking about, like, going to a conference and getting really excited about it, it's it's hard to find a new category that hasn't touched franchising, or even outside of franchising, just the world. Like, a lot of times you'll listen to different brands kind of tell their story and their positioning, and they will say that they are disruptive, right? That's kind of like a catchphrase. We're disrupting this industry. And most people that say that, I'd probably say that maybe 1 or 2% of the brands that have told me that they're disrupting the industry, I'm like, okay, you're kind of doing something a little bit different. But true disruption, like the salon suite industry, like you just said, this was true disruption to the salon industry, because before that you were either a W-2 employee, or you owned your own salon, which is hard to manage and operate, or you could rent a chair. Like those were the only options. And so when this category opened up, it was true disruption because I think it's the American way. Everybody wants to make their own way. People want to own a business. It's why franchising is so big in the United States, right? But it's very hard sometimes to own and operate a business. And there's kind of two, you got both sides of your brain. And what you find out about folks in the salon industry is they're very creative. Like the best hairstylists out there, or the best people just in the overall salon industry, very creative people. And maybe not the best operators of a business, but this gave them an opportunity to go in to 150 square foot room inside of a larger box, right? And own and operate their own business. For folks that, we haven't even really explained what the salon suite industry is. We're assuming that everybody on here knows what the heck we're talking about. But to kind of just break it down in the simplest terms is a salon suite operator, right? So the person that owns the salon suite is going out and looking for a large piece of a large box ranging from 5 to 10,000 plus square feet, right? Typically kind of in a retail type center. Something you would find next to a Whole Foods or a grocery store or just other name brand retailers. Okay. And once you get that 5 to 10,000 square foot box, you subdivide that, right, into micro suites ranging from, if you're at 5,000 square feet, you might have 25 different micro suites. If you're at 10,000 square feet, you might have 50. Okay. So you're taking a 5 to 10,000 square foot box, you're subdividing it into micro suites, and then you're renting it out to folks in the salon industry so that they can own and operate their own business. And it's really interesting because you're not really operating a salon. It's kind of like what we would say is a real estate play. It's kind of like if you have an apartment building, right? An apartment building is subdivided into units and you rent the units out, you collect the rent, you maintain the locations for your tenants. That's the value proposition. And that's really what this was. And so when we talk about headwinds, is first of all, just you kind of, the first one is right. It's just when you start something that's so disruptive, and that when anything starts, there's really not a market and you have to create a market. And so when you're creating a market, that takes a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of energy to educate people that there is a better way, right? This is how an entire industry operates today. We have something that is very disruptive, very fresh, very new, but most importantly, it's a better way. It's exactly what you want. But before us, it never came. So there's an education process. Whenever you're creating a new market, even if you are that disruptive, you are creating something brand new. It takes a lot of education, and anything that takes a lot of education takes a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of energy. Now, the other headwind is, today in franchising, what I think is able to kind of grow and scale is when the investment is under $1 million, right? I think if you look at concepts out there today, brands and concepts that are out there and growing and scaling, right, where there's multi-unit operators, multi-unit franchisees owning and operating multiple locations, I would probably say the investment's under $1 million. To take that even further, I would probably say the investment's under $500,000, right? I think that there's kind of a big break when you go over $500,000, and then when you go over $1 million, you're really decreasing the opportunity for folks to get into the business, right? And so with salon suites, when you're talking about 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 plus square feet, now you're talking about an investment that's probably over $1 million, right? So it's gonna take a completely new type of potential franchisee, a potential franchise candidate that you could talk to, because there's a lot of expense in building out that much space. Because remember, you're taking 5, 6, 7,000 square feet, and then you're subdividing it into dozens of these micro suites, and each one has plumbing run to it. Each one has cabinetry in there. Each one has a fully enclosed box with HVAC in each one. I mean, it's crazy expensive. So just the big headwind there is like, holy cow, like this is rare air. This is a very high end investment compared to everything else that's out there. So to grow and scale a business, you have to find really great franchisees. And at this level of investment, that did create um, some headwinds of having to reinvent that, right? How to finance these things. Um, and then the biggest headwind of all is okay, it's like, hey, if I build it, will they come? Right? Here I gotta go invest $1 million plus into a 10,000 square foot box, or upwards of a 10,000 square foot box. And then I gotta fill it up. Because depending on your rent structure, depending on your overhead and all that other jazz, like, you might not be breaking even until you're 2/3 full, maybe even more. And so like you have to it's a leap of faith, right? And then becomes the challenge, because you're going back and you're saying, okay, I know that this is a better way. I know it's very disruptive. I know that, like, if I can get somebody into a space for a tour, I got a pretty good chance of turning them into a tenant. But when you've got something that's so new and you're going after these creatives to take a chance and rent a suite, and you put all that together, it is a lot, with a lot of headwinds.
One of the things that is, so you said a lot there. Two things. One, the headwinds of the financing and challenges. And in that industry, there's challenges. SBA was funding it, then they decided not to fund it. Good franchisors in that industry found other funding sources. All of a sudden, we had two banks at Sola that were small community banks, but they funded many, many millions of dollars. And so good franchisor goes out and helps secure resources to help franchisees keep growing. Obviously, they do it from a selfish interest, because that's how the franchisees continue to grow. But we had 12 of them. We did SBA on the first two, and then the next 10 we funded a different way. Here's another thing I wanted to say with that too. So people are listening like, I don't have $1 million to fund this, or I can only do so many $1 million build outs, and I can't do any more than that. Tax structure back then, which is the same today, that went through a period of time where it was different, but there's accelerated depreciation. So we were able to take a lot of accelerated depreciation on these large build outs that we did. And then we were able to reduce our tax liability to nothing. I was paying zero in taxes for making money and paying zero in taxes because of accelerated depreciation. Now, when you go to sell it, there's a recapture, but you're able to use that cash to fund other things, whether it's investments or more growth in the franchise. And I did both, and it turned out really well. The other interesting thing about salon suites in general, there's different ways to do it. Sola had their way of doing it, which was a little bit different than your model of doing it. And so there's not just a one size fits all. There's different ways to build out some of these. And then the other thing, I looked it up on Facebook because I saw it. Aaron Elgin posted the other day about a Sola that her and Patrick built out in the Twin Cities. And and they've been franchisees for quite a while with Sola, almost as long as I've done it, but they've stayed in it, and they've bought a lot of their own buildings. And I mean, they did it the right way. I sold out with 12 to private equity. That was a really good payday, but the way they've done it and staying in it and buying their own is even better. Guess how big their last salon suite was, Jeff? How many square feet do you think it was?
I think you're going to say 15,000.
29,000.
That's like a shopping mall.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my Lord.
Yeah. So
That's
29,000,
unbelievable.
101 suites in there. So, but it just shows you how things evolve. You know, you start out one way and
Yeah.
it evolves. You learn things and you can test the ceiling. And, you know, we thought 10,000 was really big. You guys were doing larger ones than we were doing. I think the most we
Yeah.
had was like 43, maybe 45 suites in one location in Orange County. But, you know,
Yeah.
she's got 101 and 29,000. So, it's
That's
neat just to see
unbelievable.
how it's evolved, and it's going to continue to evolve.
Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Zs and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com.
So let's fast forward your story a little bit. I ended up owning 12 locations and built those with 4 partners. And then we sold it to private equity when Sola sold for the first time. And we sold to the same private equity company that bought Sola, which was, you know, a nice payday. They had the capital to be able to pay us what we needed to get out of that. And they've continued to grow. And then they sold to another private equity company. So, like, success story. I talked to the franchisees. They still seem to be happy. There's still innovation going on, and they're still growing. Obviously, with Aaron, that was October 4th, I think, that they opened that one up. So I'm still hearing good things. What about you? Just kind of take us quickly
100%.
through your journey.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, coming out of the conference where I met the guys from Sola, I did go out to Denver and I did spend some time with them. And obviously there were other people that were really interested in working with them. And they ended up bringing somebody in-house that is a good friend of ours, right? One of the greatest guys on the planet in franchising that was a consultant. Because that was one thing that was really interesting is you got a great concept when consultants want to start buying the concept. And after this conference, a lot of the consultants were very interested and this particular gentleman ended up, I think, owning 4. But they took it in-house and he's a great guy, and the Sola story is obviously cemented in history, right? Which is great. So they, with taking it in-house and me being resolved that I still want to be in this industry, there were some other players out there that were starting to grow and scale. But we found a company that was in Dallas and had 10 locations in between Dallas and San Antonio. And it was called Salons by JC. And the JC was Jack and Cecil. And these guys had cut their teeth in the construction industry. And they had a company that would be hired by big box retailers to find sites. I mean, we're talking big sites. Um, find sites, develop the sites, build the sites for big national retailers. And their biggest client was Big Lots that would build these, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 square foot locations. And so Big Lots would say, hey, we want to go into Phoenix. We want to open up 20 locations. These guys would do everything from the real estate to the development to the build out and then turn over the keys to Big Lots. So these guys were building big box, right? Everything's bigger in Texas. And so what happened is Jack's wife was a hairdresser, and she came to Jack and said, Jack, there's this new thing in town that just opened up, and it's a salon suite, and I can actually own and operate my own little salon inside of this building. And Jack was just like, what are you talking about? Like it was, everything was so new. He said, take me over there. And so he goes and does a tour, and he's a construction guy and he's a math guy, and he looks around and he walks into this thing and it's got 30 suites, and he sees what's going on, and he starts to take out a pen and paper and he starts writing it down, and he realizes he came to the same conclusion that I think a lot of us did. Like, holy cow, this is a winner. And so he went back to his business partner, Cecil, and said, hey man, I think we should open up a couple of these things on the side. And Cecil's like, what are you talking about? We gotta build out like 50 Big Lots this year. And he's like, listen, man, you got to look at this thing. So Cecil goes over, they get excited. So they started opening these. But because they came from the mentality of like bigger is better, and like the idea, the industry back when they got started, most of these were around 5 or 6,000 square feet. Like 6,000 was considered pretty big back in the day. We're talking like 2010, right? Or earlier than 2010, the early 2000s, right? But these guys, they couldn't comprehend building anything 5 or 6,000 square feet because they were just building these 50, 100,000 plus square foot buildings. And they started running the math, and they were just like, look, the unit economics on a 10,000 square foot location, if you can get it full, is going to be so much better than having two 5,000 square foot locations. So they just started building 10,000 square foot boxes pretty much out of the ground. Like I think their smallest one was like 8,000 square feet. And they had a son, Steve. Jack had a son, Steve, that lived in San Antonio. And they kind of brought him into the business. Great guy. And so they started opening in San Antonio and Dallas. And so when we met these guys, salt of the earth people, which is, who we like to do business with. And they said, hey, look, the industry's building these 5 or 6,000 square foot boxes. We've got 100,000 square feet between our 10 locations. Take a look at how much better the unit economics are than the guys that are out there building these smaller boxes. We know construction because it's our core business. We understand finding real estate, developing real estate, building out and constructing real estate. We know that industry. We just don't know franchising. But we think that, we've look at what we've done, and the numbers were just phenomenal. And they were better. They were better than anybody else in the industry. They were building them a little bit different. And we don't need to get into those nuances, but I just knew that like these were the guys that I wanted to partner with. And so we did. And we went through the process that we do of packaging up a brand and bringing it to market, and it caught fire. And what was interesting was it caught fire at the same time that Sola's catching fire. There were two other franchise companies also catching fire at the same time. It is very rare, okay? I don't know if you're going to see something like this again, where there are 4 different national franchise brands in the same exact category, scaling almost at the same speed as each other. We're talking like each one of these brands is adding 5 to 10 franchisees every single month, right? So think about like, holy cow, like and almost everybody that you would talk to about this brand, potential franchisees, they're also talking to the other 2 or 3 brands or 4 brands, right? And so it's like, may the best man win with the best model. We kind of felt like we had the best model. Everybody else felt like they had the best model. Everybody had kind of carved out their own little niche in the space. So it's not like these were all identical. Even though we had larger boxes, how we managed our space, how we built out our space, like there were differences. There were differences. And so, certain candidates would say, hey, look, I like this one better than that one. But it was really exciting to see that happen. And we just went on a tear. And what was really impressive, and this was not just Salons by JC's, it's what I was hearing was happening at Sola, and I would imagine was happening at the 2 other concepts. The quality of franchisee coming into this was spectacular. I mean, spectacular. Because, and this is something that I had not experienced to that point. Because keep in mind, like, JC's is building this 10,000 square foot box. The investment's over $1 million. I told you earlier that is a headwind. I mean, it was something that I had not done before. I had not done a brand where the average investment was over $1 million, and it was easy to get to $2 million if you built one big enough. And this is construction costs 15 years ago. If you want to build a 15,000 square foot salon suite today, that could be $3-4 million maybe. I don't know. But what happened is we knew that we had to go after a different candidate because this was a heavy duty investment. And yes, you could finance the investment, but that came with heavy debt service, right? Also, think about a 10,000 square foot box at $40 a square foot per year. It's like $400,000 in rent, right? You got to have a pretty nice balance sheet to be able to get a landlord to sign you up on a $400,000 annual lease, right? And so, but that's what happened is we actually didn't have a problem with the amount of people that wanted to invest into Salons by JC's. I know for a fact Sola didn't have a problem. There was not a demand problem. There was not a demand problem. If anything, markets were selling out. And then all of a sudden, another great candidate would knock on the door and say, "Hey, I want to come into this market." You're like, "Holy cow!" But the quality of the franchisee, when you're dealing with a lot of people, you're starting to deal with potential franchisees that have like 9-figure net worths. I know that Sola had billionaires. I believe I heard they had billionaires in their system. We had lots of people in the 9-figure range. Almost everybody's in the 8-figure range. And these were folks that have had a lot of success in their lives and were very attracted to this industry the same way that we were. And so we just went to work, man. And typically we've talked about the sales process before, right? We talked about the sales process before in franchising, when you talk to candidates and you take them through and you introduce them to the brand, and eventually it's time to say, hey, let's get face to face here and do the deepest dive we ever can, whether that's called a meet the team day or a confirmation day or discovery day or whatever. It's typically a brand that usually hosts one of these once a month, right? So 12 a year. With Salons by JC's, I'm going to San Antonio every other week. The demand was so high, right? So high. Keep in mind, every candidate is like 8-figure, 9-figure net worth individuals, right?
Let's talk about
I am going to San Antonio every other week.
So there's a reason why demand was high. And I want to look at this from the reason demand was so high and things ended up working out so well. It's the same reason private equity is really interested in buying these brands. And Sola was the first one, I think, that sold, and then they sold again. Phoenix took on capital. I believe they sold part of it.
My
My Salon
Salon Suites has
Suites.
done
They,
multiple
yep,
turns.
yep, they sold. And let's talk about the reasons why we think private equity was interested in these brands, which is, I think, in this case, the same reason why high net worth successful franchisees were interested in this brand. I'll start out with one that is kind of like this. One of the reasons, but I think there are better reasons that you and I can talk about. But one of the reasons that franchisees were attracted to this is because of the number of hours of involvement for the franchisee. At least from my standpoint, I've owned 6 or 7 different brands as a franchisee, and nothing even came close to the amount of hours, meaning the low amount of hours that I put into this business, especially after we got started to get our second and third and fourth one open. Like, it was just not I had one guy managing everything for us, and he literally managed everything for us. Mirko, and you know Mirko
Hmm.
now, but he's a great
Yeah.
guy, but he's the guy that managed it all for us. So we're spending, a couple hours a week as partners max on the business. So we're truly working on this business because it's a real estate play, not because of the name of the franchise or whatever, but it's a real estate play. So I like that. But with real estate, and this is one of the reasons that I think is why private equity and franchisees were so happy with this. It's very predictable. You pay your rent, and you charge rent. There's not a lot of variable costs there with employees, with scheduling, with all of these different things that have high variable costs. So very predictable. What's also predictable is you're paying the rent, you're charging rent, and so to cash flow, you need to be at X number of occupancy. For us, it was around 50%. When we would hit 50%, we knew that we were kind of cash flow break even. So our goal was to open up at 50% or greater. And there was a number of
Hmm.
them that we opened up 100%. So we were having great cash flow along the way. So we didn't have to wait a year or 2 years to kind of to creep into the business and build the business. It was like, it is what it is. And so we had to have really strong pre-sales, really strong grand openings, and then we just gave us a confidence just to keep going strong. So I think that predictable rental income and high occupancy model was one of the reasons that private equity and franchisees found that industry interesting. Anything from your end that you think would be attractive for franchisees or to private equity with that model?
Sure. I mean,
I got
so
more.
I've,
I
you
got
know,
more
I've,
too, Jeff.
no, I got, no, I got, yeah, well, yeah, I got more too, buddy. Um, Look, I've built 50 plus brands, I think, in franchising today. And you can take them all and put them on a spectrum, going from the easiest business to operate to the most complicated. You can look at it a different way. Like, how many different how many different things does a franchisee have to do to make a business successful along that same spectrum? How many plates do they need to spin and keep spinning in order to make that successful along the spectrum? And I think that a lot of brands get into trouble when they start using terms like semi-absentee, right? Or executive model. Semi-absentee businesses do exist. I'm not here to say that they don't. Executive model businesses, they do exist, right? But if you take semi-absentee and you take executive model and you put it on a spectrum, I think a lot of brands try to cheat their way up the spectrum and say they're more semi-absentee and executive model than they really are. Once again, that model does exist. And that model, if it does exist, it really is the salon suite space. You could probably even move it a little bit more up the spectrum from semi-absentee and or executive model, even further up, because it really is the hardest part about it is, and the thing that can sting you the most in it is the real estate and construction piece. So you really have to be involved with a franchisor that really knows how to nail not just finding sites, but like how you structure a 10,000 square foot lease is completely different than how you structure a 1,500 square foot lease. I mean, it's apples and bananas. In addition to that, how the due diligence that you do, the construction that you do, and how, like, that's a big piece. So like that is, but once that's done, then it comes down. Now you're in the property management business, right? You're into finding great tenants, making tenants very happy. But if you can fill it up, then yes, it becomes very predictable. And once they're full, if you operate it the right way, they're going to stay full. And typically, if you lose somebody, it's because they're moving out of the area. I mean, that's typically why. It's not because they didn't make it happen. They're moving out of the area. That was probably the number one reason why we would lose a tenant at Salon by JC's. But typically at that point, you have a waiting list, right? And so with the Salons by JC's model being 10,000 square feet, we always had an on-site property manager. That was one of our points of differentiation. Whereas many of the other brands, they were smaller, that wasn't necessary. You know, our average location had like 55 suites. And with that many, you know, imagine each one of those people having 10 to 15 clients come in during a day. That means that like there's like 600 people coming in that location on a daily basis. And so to really kind of build the culture, we always had a property manager on site, 9 to 5 or 9 to 8 or 10 to 6 or whatever it was. And so the yes, the reasons why it was attracting this type of candidate was, first of all, a lot of folks that were interested in the salon suite industry came from the real estate background. They were real estate. They were either in commercial real estate or they were property owners. They were in multi-use. They were in mixed use. They were in apartment buildings. And they looked at this and they're like, holy cow, this is like the business that I'm running now. I get it, but this is so much easier to do. And so like that, there was a flood of that. In any other category that comes out with a real estate play is always going to attract folks from the real estate world. The other thing that would happen too is you would find landlords that maybe their building was going through a little transition and they had an extra 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. They're not typically going to want to own and operate their own franchise business, right? They're in the real estate world, but now they're like, holy cow, I can actually become a franchisee of this business, put it in my own neighborhood center, and it's not as complicated as running a restaurant, right? Which is at the furthest end of the spectrum in terms of how many plates to spin and how involved the franchisee has to be to make it successful. I don't want to put all restaurants in that category, but certainly more challenging to run a restaurant than a salon suite. I think we can agree on that. Probably further apart from each other on that spectrum of complexity that I was talking about. But yes, you're attracting incredible owners because they see that this is a real estate play. Once it's full, it tends to stay full, easy to build a waiting list. Not a lot of employees to operate it. And for them at their net worth level, now it becomes scalable. And so then private equity is interested in that because, you know, when private equity starts to dive in and take a look at your brand, they want to take a look at the backgrounds of the franchisees that you have, right? Like, give me the bio. What's the avatar here? What are we dealing with? What type of community is this? What are their backgrounds? What's their financial capacity? And so when private equity takes a look at, you're just not going to find another type of category where the quality of franchisee, the net worths, the backgrounds, the success, the repeated success of these folks in their daily lives and before they got into this industry, that gets private equity really excited because they're like, wow, this is a very stable community of franchisees. They can weather the storm. If interest rates go up, they can weather the storm. If real estate or construction gets more expensive, they can weather the storm, right?
It's
And
the
then
same
yes,
thing for franchisees as well, Jeff. So you took coming at that private equity to the franchisor, same thing for franchisees, why they liked it. 40,
yep,
30, 40, 50 tenants that they have, but these tenants are not like scraping by just to pay rent. Like they're making
right,
really good money. Like they made good money. So they look at like, oh, I only have to do, you know, 2 or 3 cuts a week or whatever, colors, cut and color a week, and that pays for the rent. And so you look at the tenant mix, and you know, we wanted those that made really good money. And they did. They made good money. They made good tenants, and our job was just to keep them happy and to keep the thing full. And we, like you said, we had waiting lists as well. That was the best thing. Like you want to leave, somebody else is coming in, or someone needed to leave early, no problem. We'll let you out of your contract because we have somebody else ready to come in right away. But that was one of our fears, is like, okay, early on, is there really a market for this? Because it hasn't really been done at scale across the country. But
hmm
we knew that these salon professionals made good money. They needed something like a suite, and that was an option that they didn't have before. And we built it, and they came. Any last bits before we wrap it up?
yeah, man. I mean, I think so far we've talked about was all the good, right? And then
We
all of a
talked a bit about
sudden
the
there
bad.
was like a D-Day. There was like a D-Day where there was always rumblings, right? There was always rumblings that the financing on these could potentially um, go through some serious headwinds and some challenges, and it did, because it was like a light switch went off one day, and SBA kind of pulled back on backing banks around these, mainly because um, most of the financing that was being used was going just straight into leasehold improvements, right? And you're not really hiring a lot of people, and it basically was a real estate play. The things that made it great also made it complicated with financing eventually, and so the demand the demand was always there, but the supply, the ability to finance folks became more and more of a challenge. Trust me, plenty of salon suite brands have been able to continue to grow and scale and exit to private equity after some of these changes came into place. Some of them like were able to augment their models to be totally in line with SBA guidelines. And so like there's still an opportunity. Do I want to go back into it? Trust me, there's been a couple of times where I've talked to some other salon suite operators over the years and thought about dipping my toe back in. But with today, I would be nervous about doing another 10,000 square foot box concept, multi-million dollar investment concept. I'd rather kind of get back down into the $500,000 or less, per franchise operation. It's a better place for us, especially when interest rates are a little bit higher. So the model is sound and people are still expanding. There have been some differences and some challenges. Like where I kind of started today, like the salon suite era, like the golden age of the salon suite, which was probably between like 2010 and 2013, like that 3 year stretch of an industry coming in and completely disrupting the entire category, the entire salon suite category, and the fun that we had. And here was the interesting thing is we knew all the other folks that were developing the other three national companies at the same time. These were like our buddies, right? So there's nothing better than like competing against your buddies. But yeah, I mean, the the story goes that it did change. Everything changes. You always have to pivot. You always have to evolve. You always have to overcome challenges and push forward. But man, when you said, "Hey, let's kind of talk about this topic today," um, I had I have such special feelings for this industry, and I'm always on the hunt for like something similar but different in a category like this.
Well, this is one where we saw it early on. We both took big bets, different bets, and we won. Lots of brands won, franchisees won. You look back, it wasn't a fad. It was like it changed an industry, which was really cool. So awesome. All right. Well, I got to go get the boat ready to go get winterized, and I'm sure you got stuff
Oh
to do
boy.
too. All
Yes,
right.
I'm picking up a couple of daughters at the airport here soon. All right, man. Cheers.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.